Welcome back to the channel. I hope you've been enjoying this tour through the states. Obviously, in grade school and stuff, I did learn about some of the states as we went along, but I haven't actually delved too deeply other than most of the time I just knew that it was a state and what the capital of the state was. Anyway, we have Nebraska today. So Nebraska is one of the Great Plains states, and let me find where I put that. So Nebraska is called the Cornhusker state. Now the reason it's, well, one, Nebraska comes apparently from an Otoe Indian word, Nebraska or Nebraska, which is flat water or broad water. There's a river that's called the Platte River, Platte, that runs east or west to east. Let's see. I did have it in here. Here it is. It runs west to east across the state, and it's pretty big river, pretty important to the state. And so that became the name of the state. Then we have it. It's the state nickname called the Cornhusker state, and it is part of their historical association with agriculture, particularly the corn farming aspect. A Cornhusker is someone who removes the husk from the corn, which was pretty common in Nebraska during harvest season. You had a lot of people that were husking the corn. So it was officially adopted in 1945. So corn was a staple in the region a long time before 1945, and that's why it got its name, the Cornhusker state. So moving on to some of the other stuff. So statehood for Nebraska was achieved March 1st, 1867, making it the 37th state to join the Union. The capital of Nebraska is Lincoln, and the population of Nebraska is 1.9 million, making it roughly 1.9 million, making it the 38th most populous state. It's interesting that its statehood was 37th and its population is 38th. Not that that's any correlation, obviously, just interesting. So area, it is 77,358 square miles, or 2,356 kilometers squared, making it the 16th largest state. The largest cities are Omaha, Lincoln, Bellevue, and Grand Island. Excuse me. Now, Nebraska was first, I shouldn't say discovered, but the first European settlers and explorers to enter what would become Nebraska were the French. Specifically, it was Jacques Marquette and then Louis Jollet. They were mapping the area and exploring the area for France. It was claimed, but it wasn't until the 19th century that people started moving into the area and settling the area. So the 1673, the French had claimed the area, but nobody was really living there. It was no white European settlers were living there. Let me phrase it that way. That's better. 1854. So then we have the Louisiana Purchase, and Nebraska, what would become Nebraska, became part of the United States. Then in 1854, that's when the area was officially recognized as the territory of Nebraska. The Kansas-Nebraska Act specifically led to the organization of that territory. Then 1867, of course, we have statehood. There was growth throughout that particular. I mean, I don't have a lot of dates down here, 1867 to the Great Depression. There's a lot of stuff that happened in between there, mostly the Pioneer Days and the Homestead Act. So the Homestead Act basically said that, like, if you could go to a place, you claim property and you homestead it, you built your home, your farm, whatever there, then you could claim that with minimal payment, maybe even none. I'd have to look into it a little bit more directly to remind myself all the details. But basically, it was an effort by the government to fuel westward expansion. So the Homestead Act did bring a lot of people into the Nebraska area because it was like free land. As long as you could go out there and stake your claim and get it going, it was all yours. So it did push people into Nebraska and into the western part of the United States. Then, of course, we had statehood. We have the Great Depression coming on. Obviously, there was growth as more people came into the area. So 19th, 20th centuries, there was a lot of agricultural development, wheat, corn, livestock. They were a huge part of the economy for Nebraska. Then the Great Depression, so the drought that created the Dust Bowl in the United States was a huge hit for Nebraska and the agricultural industry. One of the things that to me is somewhat strange about, say, the Great Depression. You would think that in the agricultural sector it might not hit as hard because people still need to eat. But obviously that is a vulnerable area. If people can't pay for the food, you can't sell the food to them, you're not making any money if you just give it away. There you go. But anyway. So, because of that, because of the Great Depression, a lot of states tried to diversify their economy so they weren't relying anymore on one particular area of the economy. So Nebraska, they kind of diversified their agriculture, but also their other industry. So they brought in soybeans, beef, pork. I mean, there was still some of that there, but we also have the incoming of insurance, telecommunications, transportation, and a lot of other stuff that ended up picking the United States up out of the Great Depression, some of that being World War II. The climate in Nebraska is, or let me back up. I skipped straight to climate, geography. Let's start with geography. So the majority of Nebraska is covered by the Great Plains. Now, between the Rocky Mountains and the Appalachian Mountains, which is the center of the United States, we have the Great Plains, which is basically the flattest area in the United States. And so there's lots of grass, makes it a really good agricultural area, which is why Nebraska, one of their major industries was agriculture and still is. We also have the sandhills. So in the center part of the state, there's this geographic feature called the sandhills. It's a large region of sand dunes. It is the largest sand dune formation in the Western Hemisphere, interestingly enough. Then we have the high plains. So as I said, there's the Great Plains, the high plains. The elevation towards the west starts to climb, and that is basically what makes it the high plains. There's more, I want to say mountainous, but it's not really mountainous terrain. It's definitely more rugged terrain, but it's still relatively flat compared to other parts of the United States, and so it's still a plain. It's just not quite part of that elevation separates it from the Great Plains a little bit. And usually I don't talk much about rivers unless they have a huge impact on the geography of the area, and the Platte River flows through most of the state. west-east, and then where it joins up with the Missouri River on the eastern border. So you have that as part of what defines the geography of the state. As far as climate goes, it's a continental climate. It has the 4 distinct seasons, obviously. I shouldn't say obviously, because some places, Hawaii doesn't really have 4 distinct seasons. It kind of has a wet season and a dry season. But anyway, the summers are hot and humid. The temperature ranges from mid-80s to the 90s, mid-90s, which is 29 to 35 degrees Celsius. It can get up to in the hundreds, and it does have a lot of thunderstorms in the area with some tornadoes. In the autumn, the temperature drops off. The highs or the average high temperatures are the 70s to the low 80s, which is 21 to 28 degrees Celsius. And then we move into the winters. They're cold, 30s to 40s in Fahrenheit, which is 1 to 9 degrees Celsius. And the temperature drops below freezing a lot of the time across the state. Snowfall. More snow in the north and western region of the state, but the state does get snow. In the spring, with the rapidly changing weather, the temperature fluctuates quite wildly, but the average highs are 60s to 70s, which is 15 to 26 degrees Celsius, and you have thunderstorms and tornadoes also in the spring. Precipitation is moderate. The eastern portion gets more rainfall, and spring and summer are the wettest because that's when the thunderstorms and whatever else rolls in. It is a drought-prone area as well, and water resources are a big concern for the state in a lot of ways. Industry. So the biggest industries in Nebraska, we have agriculture still dominates, food processing because of agriculture. Then we have manufacturing, financial services, we have information technology, renewable energy and education, and health services. So as far as agriculture goes, Cargill, it's one of the largest privately owned agricultural companies in the world. And yeah, Archer Daniels Midlands, Tyson Foods, ConAgra, Green Plains Inc., Valmont Industries, some of the larger industries there that have to deal with agriculture. And those somewhat bleed over into the food processing because we've got ConAgra, Tyson, Hormel, Kellogg's, Omaha Steaks. A lot of those may not necessarily be strictly agriculture, but they cross into food processing or vice versa. And then we have in the manufacturing, Kawasaki Motors, Valmont Industries, Betcon Dickinson, Cushman Industries are some of the ones there. In the financial, Mutual of Omaha. I used to watch a nature program when I was a kid. It would come on Saturdays, and it was sponsored by this particular insurance company, Mutual of Omaha. So I remember them all the time. Used to think, oh, can't we get back to the program? I don't want to hear more about insurance. Berkshire Hathaway, First National Bank of Omaha, Farm Credit Services America, Emeritus, in information technology. It's interesting that when I was doing searches for information technology companies in Nebraska, we have Nelnet, Sojourn, Info Group, Fiserv, Data Media Solutions, but we also get Union Pacific Railroad. Apparently they have a significant IT department in Nebraska, so there you go. Or at least they're headquartered in Nebraska, and they have a large IT department to support them. So anyway, renewable energy, Invenergy, Next Era Energy Resources, EDP Renewables, North America, Blue Stem Energy Solutions. There's some of the ones there. Into education, University of Nebraska Medical Center, Nebraska Medicine, CHI Health, Methodist Health Systems, Creighton University, University of Nebraska-Lincoln, Clarkson College. So some of the big names there in the education and health services. As far as tourism, you can pretty much expect anywhere you go in the United States to cater to outdoor activities. Nebraska doesn't really have things like snow skiing. They may do some cross-country skiing. The state is definitely not known for it's known for being flat. It's part of the Great Plains. Not a lot of mountains, so to speak, in the state. But definitely hiking, water sports, and biking, things to get you out in the outdoors. Some of the interesting places to go see in Nebraska, we have, as I said, there's a lot of national and state parks. Strategic Air Command and Aerospace Museum. So the Strategic Air Command, part of the United States military, they have an aerospace museum there in Nebraska. Old Market is the downtown district of Omaha, and it has the shops, galleries, restaurants, entertainment venues. You have Carhenge. Apparently somebody decided to rebuild Stonehenge in Nebraska, but make it look like it's made out of cars. Or I shouldn't say make it look like it's made out of cars. It is made out of cars. They're vintage cars arranged like Stonehenge. Then they have a lot of national and state parks that are part of the state. Chimney Rock National Historic Site. If you've heard about the Oregon Trail, which was the trail from the eastern part of the United States through the continent, through the Great Plains, through the Rocky Mountains out to Oregon, Chimney Rock was one of the landmarks along the way. We have the Sand Hills, as I mentioned before, with the sand dunes, hiking, bird watching, all sorts of stuff out there. Toadstool Geologic Park. So instead of being a lot of mushrooms, that's, if you're unfamiliar with toadstools, toadstools is another name for mushrooms. So instead of being a park full of mushrooms, it's mushroom-like formations. They're rocks. They look a lot like mushrooms. So there's that. Arbor Lodge State Historical Park and Arboretum. So it's a historic site with an arboretum, which is something. Arbor is like tree, but I'm not sure if it's a tree park or if it's like more like what's the word for it? I think it's specifically about trees, but I'd have to look up the word exactly. Agate Fossil Beds National Monument, and then the Fort Robinson State Park, camping, horseback riding, hiking, and military history there. Trivia. My favorite part. Kool-Aid was invented in Nebraska. If you're unfamiliar with Kool-Aid, it is a drink mix. So it comes in a little paper packet. You rip it open, you pour the powder in, you put in a cup of sugar, and then fill the container with water, and you get a flavored drink mix. It was invented in Hastings, Nebraska by Edwin Perkins in 1927. So it's been around for almost 100 years. They celebrate Kool-Aid Days every year. Nebraska is the only state in the United States that's triple landlocked. What that means is there are a lot of states in the United States that have no direct access to the coast. The state that I live in doesn't have access to the coast. We're surrounded by other states. However, if you move from Nebraska into one of the states that borders Nebraska, none of those states either have access to the coast. You have to go at least 3 states away before you get to, I guess it would be 2 states. So it's Nebraska, you go 1, 2. Then you might end up in a state that has access to the coast. So it's the only triple landlocked state. Arbor Day. Arbor Day is a national holiday in the U.S. where we celebrate planting trees. It was celebrated for the first time in Nebraska City, April 10th, 1872. J. Sterling Morton was a journalist and politician, and he created that tradition. And then, he's credited at least with starting the tradition. And then from there, we now have Arbor Day in the United States. Halsey National Forest. It's the largest hand-planted forest in the United States. It was established in 1902, and it covers over 90,000 acres. So, yeah. And then Nebraska claims to have the world's largest porch swing in Hebron, Nebraska. It's 32 feet long and can hold 18 adults. Interestingly enough, it is the only state in the United States that has a unicameral legislature. So most states, they mimic, their local government mimics the federal government. So the federal government, we have the Senate and the House of Representatives. And most states have something similar, a similar setup where they have the state legislature, which has the state Senate and the state House of Representatives. Nebraska does not. They have their own setup, and they have a one-chamber legislature. It was 1937. So originally they had a bicameral system like most of the rest of the United States. I'm not entirely sure of all of the states. Some states might have 3 or 4 or more legislative chambers. I'm not entirely sure. I know that Nebraska is the only state with 1. So there you go. Then we have, moving on, whistling underwater is illegal in Gibbon, Nebraska. Elephant races are not allowed. It's illegal to hold elephant races on the streets. I don't know. Maybe they had one once and they're like, no, never again. You may not fish while sitting on a giraffe's neck. I don't know. You may not have a marathon. You may not run a marathon in a public building without first notifying the authorities. I mean, what public building has 26 miles worth of public building in order to do a marathon? Yikes. You may not douse a firefighter. So you may not douse a firefighter with water or any other liquid. Yeah. And then you may not fish for blue whales. Blue whale fishing, that's what it came up as, but technically it would be whaling, not fishing. So it is illegal, it is prohibited to hunt blue whales in Nebraska. Why they need that on the books, I do not know. Nebraska is landlocked. You cannot be in Nebraska and go whaling at all. Anyway, there's a lot of states in the United States that for some reason felt the need to put a law like this on the books and make it against the law, that they outlawed whaling, but there was no possible way that anybody in the state could go whaling. Anyway, that's it for Nebraska. Let me know what you thought. Let me know if you've been to Nebraska. Let me know if I missed anything. Please, there's plenty of space down in the comments. Like, subscribe, turn on the bell notifications so you get notifications when I release new videos. See you later.